Check. 1, 2, 1, 2. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Saludos and salutations, Broncos Country, and welcome to another exciting episode of Broncos Talk. Today, we are going to recap the exciting game, another W that the Broncos got over the Raiders. It was a great sweep. It was a clean sweep, and it was almost unpredicted at that. Plus, the topic of today's show, are the Broncos pretenders, like a lot of people are saying, mostly all the haters, of course, or are they actually playoff caliber contenders? Ladies and gentlemen, we have all that plus much more. Broncos OT, and of course everybody in the chat. So ladies and gentlemen, here we go. And welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alan Diaz, and I am the owner and proprietor. Proprietor? I swear that is probably one of the hardest sounding words I've ever had to sound in my whole life. Proprietor of Broncos Talk. And normally I'd be joined by my co-host, Ty, the fantasy guy. He is still out, ladies and gentlemen. Please send him your very best. Ty, we love you. We miss you, and we can't wait to have you here with us on the show. So unfortunately, I will be doing this flying solo, another one show again. But ladies and gentlemen, it is not all bad news. It's not all grim, thank God. But before we get to talk about any and all things Broncos football, ladies and gentlemen, if this is your first time watching, there's a couple of things we have to get out of the way before we continue with all of the good things. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, this show is being brought to you on the Orange and Blue Network. So please make sure you subscribe, share, comment, and like on all of their shows, on every single one of their shows, ladies and gentlemen. Even if Broncos Talk is not your flavor, how dare you? Just kidding. But there are a lot of shows on this platform that are for everybody. There's current shows like the Nothing Rhymes with Orange and Blue, which is the flagship show. There's this show, and there's also Viva los Broncos that consists of me. I know 2 days of in a row of me, right? We can't get enough. It consists of me and my co-host Bronco Libre. We had a great time coming to you guys live last week on a Saturday, but that was just a once in a blue type of thing. We will be broadcasting Broncos Libre in Spanish every single Friday going forward, especially this Friday. And not only are we on the Orange and Blue Network, ladies and gentlemen, we are also on the MHRT Network. So make sure you guys go and give my friends over there like, comment, subscribe, and share. Try to do it backwards, but it's harder. On all of their shows, they have a lot of great programming over there, as well as the Neighborhood, which is the on-call games for those of you that aren't able to watch the Broncos game on TV because of whatever restrictions that are in your area. They have you covered. They cover every single play-by-play, and it's always a good set of people over there. So make sure you go and give them a like, subscribe. Tell them your boy 610 sent you. And yeah, so if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, you can hit me up at a 6'10" Mexican. I'm always down and happy to talk about any and all things football. For any business inquiries, you can email at broncostalk2020@gmail.com. For our audio listeners that are not able to join us here during the live show, please make sure you hit that 5-star button, that little bell for live notifications, subscribe so that you never miss a show or recording when it gets posted. Any reviews are always welcome. Please make sure you screenshot them and send them to me so that way we know that your support is that you're supporting us through that side and how we can be better if there's anything we can be better at going forward. And again, this show is also being brought to you by Dubby. Ladies and gentlemen, I just have one question for you. Have you ever had to go a single day without coffee or energy drinks? I know I can't. But thanks to Dubby, they take care of that for you. Ladies and gentlemen, they are having a Black Friday sale, which is site-wide, 40% off. You can use their code BF2024, and you get 40% off on all their drinks. It's the drinks you see here on the screen for those of you with visual technology. They have red, the black one, my personal favorite is the green one, and a bunch of other great flavors. Now, you might be asking yourself, why go with Dubby? I'm going to explain it to you. So Dubby gives you that formulated feeling that gives you focus and energy with no jitters or crash. Their formula contains vitamins, amino acids, and nootropics, including their patented NeuroFactor formula. There's no calories, no sugar, no maltodextrin, no fillers, and no artificial colors. So it's all the good stuff without all the bad stuff that you normally get with everything that goes into coffee and especially energy drinks, because I can't tell you how many people, every time they see me with an energy drink in my hand when I have to drink one last minute, they always point and say, it's bad for you and it's got so-and-so and blah, blah, blah. And they're right. So make sure you go and get yourself a W out there. And to make it even better, my good friends over at the Nothing Rhymes With crew, they're going to give you an extra 10% on that, on top of the 40%. You just have to use their code NRWOB10 for 10% off on top of the 40% off at checkout. So please make sure you go and get yourself some W. And we would also extend a very big thanks to W for being a sponsor for today's show and for every show on the Nothing Rhymes with Orange and Blue network. So very much thanks to them. I misclicked that time. How's everybody today? You know what the best thing about today was getting to see a lot of people on social media go home early for the holiday. I mean, me personally, I had the day off. For me, working in the conference service, I don't even know if that's an industry, but I'm going to say it anyway. In the industry, we are always, this is when our slow season begins for us. So from here all the way to like maybe March-ish, we're not super busy. So my job normally, I don't know if I've ever explained this on the air, is just basically setting up business meetings during the week for all these different companies that come. And then on weekends, we would do weddings and private parties and family reunions and just like more festive stuff on weekends during the summer, the fall, and like the early spring. Every year's different. So, but for us, the winter season is when we get slow, obviously, because of the cold and the snow and all that stuff. So this is when they don't mind us, going on vacation because there's not a lot to do. But thankfully, Uber keeps me busy as my second job. So I'm going to be doing a lot more of that this year, probably. I don't know. But it's nice having to see people because actually there's a lot of people that are traveling. If you're traveling, ladies and gentlemen, just make sure you're careful and safe because this is the craziest, aside from Christmas, time of year to travel. Like I can only imagine all the people at the airport right now or the people that are trying to fly between tomorrow during the day, because last year was hectic, trying to get to the airport, trying to fly out of the airport. And I can only imagine them landing wherever it is and all that stuff. So today was very hectic for people, whether you're going in a car, a train, airplane, whatever. Just please make sure you travel safely and enjoy your time with your family. This is kind of like a pre-Thanksgiving show. So I'm actually really excited to be here with you guys today because we have a lot to talk about. So first of all, let's give it up for the Raiders losing, being the Raiders. And let's also give it up for the Broncos sweeping the Raiders. So I don't know how loud that song's on the microphone, but I hope it's not that loud. But it was amazing, ladies and gentlemen, to be able to go into Las Vegas and finally break the streak. So last year this was kind of like our mini Super Bowl, just like it was last year when the Broncos finally beat Kansas City in Denver. That was our bit of our mini Super Bowl. So I guess for Denver this year, I guess you can call this our mini Super Bowl event where it just felt great. So it was another great showing by Bo Nix. And I am always so happy to say and proud to say that the everything that Bo Nix has done lately has just been amazing. Like the turnaround from where we thought he was week one, that really ugly game against the Seahawks and then the Steelers, and then where it just looked like it was going to be another one of those freaking seasons. And then he rolled into Tampa Bay and he started to turn it around. And he's only had one really bad game since the Bucs game, and that was the Ravens, where it was just kind of like, and it wasn't just him, it was like the entire Broncos, the team itself just got shellacked. And it's okay. Every team has a really bad game, regardless of how good you are on either side of the ball. There's just going to be another team out there that's just going to make it feel a whole lot worse. And it's okay. It's okay. It's not going to always be the way you want it to be. However, what the Broncos didn't do, and I kind of share some blame on this because I felt like that we were going backwards on it, was just the fact that, after that game, like I don't like to lose. Okay, you guys know me. I don't like to lose. Especially my favorite football team. So I took that loss very personally. Probably more than the loss against Miami, if I'm being honest with you guys. I don't know why, but the Miami one just felt like last year. It just felt like a nuke needed to be dropped in Broncos country and just start over from scratch. It was like that type of feeling. So with this game, even though the Broncos really they actually put up a better stat, if I'm not mistaken, last week against the first time against the Raiders this season, because they actually hung like 30 something points. The Broncos were close this time around, but they had a really slow start in the first half. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, not having Zach Allen out there on that defensive line spoke volumes. I think that man could have easily, all he has to do when it's time for contract negotiations is just point to that game and say, this is what your team looks without me. That's what your team is going to look like going forward if I don't get signed to this team. So bringing him on, and I said this before on another show, and I'm going to say it again, because bringing him on and letting Draymond Jones walk to Seattle. And I still remember I was really upset about that. I thought Draymond should have been signed and he should have been here. I wasn't that high on Zach Allen because I felt like, maybe he was just one of those guys that was going, wherever Vance Joseph was going. And it kind of was, but I didn't really value that acquisition. I had no idea that he was going to be such a game wrecker. And that's exactly what Zach Allen has been ever since he's been a Bronco. And not having him out there was such a blessing for that Raiders offensive line, because even though they struggled, they had to struggle without having to deal with Zach Allen, because if they did, I don't even think Gardner Minshew would have put up anywhere near the numbers he did. Would have been more incompletions and probably been more susceptible to make a bad throw for interception, more than just the one that Brandon Jones got, mind you. So not having him out there it really sucked. It really broke my heart seeing him in a walking boot. However, I do have it under good authority that he is practicing currently with a helmet on. So hopefully that walking boot isn't something that's going to limit him for the most. He may, this isn't confirmed, but he might have to sit out against the Browns just to kind of give him more time, because the Broncos do have a bye week after the Browns game on Monday night. And then they'll be back at home against the Colts, if I'm not mistaken. So if it needs more extra time to heal, the D-line is going to have to step it up and be that ferocious as they were again against the Browns, and they'll have to do it without the help of Zach Allen. Aside from that, the Broncos' second halftime turnaround was just beyond amazing. And it was almost the exact same thing that happened the first time they faced off against each other. The first time it was when PS2 got that interception and he ran it back for a touchdown from one end zone to the other, which was freaking beautiful. The second one was the turnaround with Brandon Jones. Now, Brandon Jones wasn't able to get a touchdown out of it, but he did help turn the momentum against the Raiders. And then the Broncos finally snapped out of it, and Courtland Sutton just had a fantastic day on the field. And wouldn't you know it, the one day I don't play Courtland Sutton in my fantasy league, and he goes off for like almost 30 freaking points. And I could have won my league if I would have just played him, or Jordan Addison for that matter. Like, those two players were not on my squad, and they go off for like almost 60 points on their own put together. Like, it's just freaking believable. And watch, I don't want to jinx it, especially if you have Courtland Sutton out there, but I'm starting him this week. I really do hope he comes through for me, because we are getting really close to playoffs. They're like in 2 weeks in most standard leagues. So standings are counting. So crossing my fingers that Courtland Sutton and Bo Nix come through for me yet again. But I guess the topic of today's show, ladies and gentlemen, when I told Johnny, because I'm pretty sure Johnny, I don't know, I kind of felt like he kind of thought about it. Maybe he didn't know where I was coming from, but he always shows me my best support. By the way, shout out to Johnny Baki for being Baki. As I said at the beginning of the show, at the intro, a lot of people have been kind of outside of Broncos country at that, have been kind of looking down on the Broncos, just saying that, oh, they're just going to be a playoff team. Like they'll probably be out by Super Wild Card weekend. And that to me, that breaks my heart. It literally does, because this team is not made to just barely scrape by and get a wild card spot and be bounced by the wild card weekend. No, sir. By no freaking shot is that true. On social media, just today, I heard two people that agreed with me and put their money in the middle of the table and said that they believe the Broncos can get as far as the AFC Championship game. Now, that's pretty far. That's just one game away from the Super Bowl. And you guys have heard me say it here before. I want the Broncos. I'm as much as the next man, the diehard Broncos fan, and I would love nothing more than the Broncos to go to the Super Bowl. But the other teams on the NFC, they're just playing some really great freaking football right now, guys. And the way the Broncos are now, I'm not 100% sure that even if the Broncos could get to the Super Bowl, getting past the Ravens, the Steelers, the Chiefs, well, not so much the Chiefs because they suck, but couple of, I can't think, the Bills, like those guys they're already a hurdle big enough to jump that the Broncos can more than likely have a chance of going toe-to-toe and getting past. But you got a team like the Eagles being led by Vic Fangio as a defensive coordinator, and then the Lions, who are just playing cutthroat football right now. So it's like the Broncos are working. They're getting there to be a powerhouse. And this season, it's kind of like, okay, here's how far we can go. So they're not pretenders by any sort of the imagination, okay? This isn't going to be like last year where we were all hanging by a prayer that we just needed Russell Wilson to go out there and beat the Patriots and we would have made the playoffs. This isn't that same scenario. Not by a long shot. The Broncos have a very favorable schedule coming up forward, even after their bye. The only team that they really face that might be a threat is probably the Bengals. But that's just because Joe Burrow, you can't turn your nose on Joe Burrow because he will pay you. He will make you pay for it. So even with our best player locking down Jamar Chase, like they still have T. Higgins, they have Chase Brown. I'm getting way ahead of myself, but they got weapons on there. Unfortunately, they've just been on the wrong side of luck in terms of trying to win games and being a great football team. That's not the Browns, though. Okay, so we have to get past the Browns first, and I think the Broncos can do that. Now, I will say that the Browns would have to probably pray that there's about a big snowfall as it was on last week's Thursday Night Football for them to have a chance. Because I feel like the snow was like their 12th man. Okay. No BS aside. Like it almost felt like if it wasn't for the snow, the Browns probably don't win that game that way. It probably would have made them work a little bit harder to try to win that game. But for the Broncos, the fact that they're finally getting the media attention from all sorts of walks of life is amazing. From everything from your Good Morning Football to your Colin Cowherds, even on Nightcap. I know they were talked about on Nightcap too. Like they are making the rounds in the media. However, it's kind of weird that even though Colin Cowherd thinks very high of the Broncos, he still doesn't rank them high on his top Cowherd hierarchy thing that he does, where he names the top 10 teams every week. And the Broncos are probably just underneath the Chargers. Now, I get it. He probably put the Chargers ahead because the Chargers did beat the Broncos earlier this season. But if the Chargers lose another game next week and the Broncos win theirs, then I need to see them up at least on the 10th spot, like literally at the bottom of the total poll of the top 10. Hell, the Broncos are already top 10 in most rankings, on your PFTs and the NFL rankings, which I just read earlier today, they're literally like the 10th. So they're right there. They're right underneath the best of the best, which is the top 9 teams ahead of them. So that alone is a very, very wonderful thing to see. Okay, because nobody going into this season, even after the acquisition of Bo Nix from the draft, thought that the Broncos would be in this position. I'll be the first to tell you, there is no way this team is in that position with Zach Wilson or the other guy. I can't Jared Stidham. I don't care who you are. You cannot make that argument. There is no way those two guys get us to this position. No freaking way. This team is in this position because of the play that Bo Nix has put out there. And I'm counting the first 3 losses of the season. And that's because he's a rookie. And we only have, 5 more games where we can say any loss coming up is like, oh, it's because he's a rookie, but he's learning. He's a rookie, but he's learning. If that was Zach Wilson or Jared Stidham, you can't say that with them on there. You're just going to be scratching your head like, if it's Zach Wilson, we'd be complaining that, hey, like they traded for you. Why? If it's Jared Stidham, like still waiting for that spark from week 18 of last year against the Raiders that we never freaking saw. So it's kind of like, no, man. So this unnecessary thing where they made like this quarterback competition and this carousel and this entire thing during training camp this year was so totally unnecessary. And it surprised nobody when Bo Nix was named the starter. It gave us relief because at one point, I honestly thought that we were about to be a Zach Wilson-led team or another Jared Stidham-led team, and it was about to be another name added to the giant wall of quarterbacks that have been added since the great Peyton Manning rolled off into the sunset 9 years ago. So we don't need to see it. We don't want it to happen. And as long as Bo Nix continues to play the way he's playing, then we are probably going to be okay in terms of not having to worry about them coming in and, trying to lead this team going forward. Now, you probably will see them come in when the Broncos take a big lead and the game's out of hand and they're just out there to close the game, or vice versa. But it hasn't come to that yet. I think Stidham has he came in, was it this past game? He came in for one of these wins. I can't remember which one it was, but I remember he was out there. I think it was the Falcons. I'm pretty sure it was the Falcons because the Falcons had already put out Penix Jr. out there before their bye. So I'm going to go with the Falcons. I think it was them. But for people out there to still say that the Broncos are pretenders, it makes me laugh. And they're not, and it would probably make more sense to me if it was like Raiders fans or Chargers fans or Chiefs fans who just like to laugh at everything, not realizing that their own offense isn't playing up to par, which we're going to talk about later on in today's OT segment of the show. But the fact that the Broncos have been able to finally win in Vegas, something they haven't been able to do in a long freaking time, and sweep the Raiders, just literally killed their confidence, the Raiders' confidence. And the most surprising thing is probably could happen this Friday, which we will also talk about later. I will say, though, that everything wrong with the Raiders starts with the owner. It really does. And the fact that the owner was brave enough to move ahead from Josh McCown last year, or Josh McDaniels, last year, midseason, and then go with Antonio Pierce and not do the same with Antonio Pierce. Because so far to me, Pierce is playing a whole lot worse than Josh was last year. And I said it last year too to my friend who's a Raiders fan. I said, you guys should have kept Garoppolo. Like, granted, he wasn't like as good as he was before behind Tom Brady or that little flash he had with the 49ers, but he was still the better option. So letting him go and riding the win with Aiden O'Connell and going out and Garrett Minshew, which, let's be honest, Minshew looked a whole lot better as a Jaguar than he ever did as a Colt or as a Raider. By the way, sucks that he broke his collarbone. I never want to see any player injured, even if it's on a rival team. It really sucks that happened to him. But Aiden O'Connell's going to have to be the guy going forward, and whoever the Raiders get to sign behind, because Minshew's done for the season. Broken collarbone, that's it. So I honestly thought they were going to go for Daniel Jones. And I was like, man, Daniel Jones is going to suit up as a Raider and, try to go and beat Patrick Mahomes on Friday. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. He ended up signing with Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken. So he's going to go out there and try to, he's going to be playing behind Sam Darnold. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't actually throw a football as a Viking. But that's going to be a little weird to see. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, but the fact that the Broncos went into Vegas and that first half was really nerve-wracking, okay? It was like nail-biting. We were kind of wondering, like, what the hell was going on, and it looked like maybe it was going to be on Will Lutz, because I was really thinking, like, it's probably going to be on Will Lutz to, kick us into a W, because the running game, the running game has been struggling for a long time, since the only exception being the Saints game. But they've been really struggling. They couldn't have been able to get anything. Nix was kind of he didn't get roughed up, but he was kind of getting made uncomfortable by the defensive line. Max Crosby was just a pain in terms of trying to deal with. Thank God he didn't have a sack on Bo Nix this game. But the fact that Bo Nix was able to kind of work around him and just kind of get around him and avoid him was amazing. He learned from the first time. And Max Crosby also learned from the first time by not talking smack, as far as we could hear anyway on anybody's hot mic, after getting their ass handed to them the first time. And then they got their ass handed to them again. But I will give credit where credit is due. Max Crosby is a hell of a player. And the fact that he was able to get where he had to get, where he was able to get most of the people except Bo Nix, was still very impressive. Okay, I will give Max Crosby that. Not impressive enough to get the win, but impressive enough where I'm surprised he's still a Raider, to be honest with you. I thought that the Lions were going to make a big jump for him before the deadline, and either they did and the Raiders didn't bite, or the Raiders wanted probably like a couple first picks and somebody's newborn, for the services of Max Crosby. I don't know, but I think it was the thing that really sucked, and it didn't break my heart, but it kind of made me feel bad, was seeing Desmond Ridder out there, a man that was literally thrown into the wolves. Now, I get it. It's his job to be the backup quarterback, and that's what the backup quarterback does when the starting quarterback goes down. But I was just like, yeah, this guy's going to get killed. And literally on, like, what was it, the second or third play of that drive, like, he just gets strip sacked, and he never saw it coming. It was just, oh, my God. I don't even know why I said earlier that the don't be surprised if the Raiders downgrade Desmond Ridder to like quarterback 3 and they go out and get somebody from the practice squad or waivers or some crazy notion like that to sit behind Aiden O'Connell this week, because now they have to worry about Chris Jones. And but it was just an amazing showing. Like, the second half from Bo Nix was, oh my God, to be a fly in that film room on Monday and just hear like all the good stuff that was being mentioned, his pocket presence, his delivery, it's freaking great. And you know what the best news was it today? No, I think it was yesterday, is that somebody out in Broncos Country management heard me. They heard my cry. Got rid of Dulcich. And now he got picked up by the Giants. And Drew Lock is starting for the Giants tomorrow. So we're probably going to see, maybe, I don't know if Dulcich will play right away because he still has to learn the playbook and stuff. Don't be surprised if he does. But, it's going to be the old Broncos connection between Drew Lock and Dulcich in Giants colors. But finally, they got rid of him. He's no longer a question mark in Broncos country in terms of, is he healthy? Did he get hurt again? When's he going to play? Now, the only question that I'm posing, and it's probably not like a very smart question at that, is his position. I haven't read the report yet in terms to see if they filled it. Now, I'm pretty sure they did it because they're bringing back Drew Sanders, and there was another player that they needed a roster spot for. But somebody in our Broncos chat did mention, like, why don't they bring back Donald Parham, the tight end that's been mysteriously a Bronco, even though he's never been seen dressed as a Bronco or has never played a game as a Bronco, because this team is still missing a tight end. Adam Troutman has been pretty good. Kroll is just Kroll, but we still need that big tight end that can kind of help Bo get out of a jam, especially since the running game is not really been consistent in helping right now. So we need that big guy. And I really want to, don't get me wrong, I do want to see what Drew Sanders brings to a Vance Joseph defense. It sucks that he got hurt. What was it? Training camp? Excuse me. Last year. Or no, not last year, earlier this year. So if they give it to him, I guess it's fine because it helps reinforce the linebacker position. But I can't be the only one that still wonders what the hell's going on with Donald Parham, right? I can't be. I literally can't be. Like, I'm telling you, every time I see the inactive roster, I'm like, I want to see Parham's name on there. Or when they see the players that have been elevated from practice squad, like, I want to see Parham's name up there that he got elevated. So that's what I'm really hoping for happens on before Monday's game, is that Parham gets elevated and he gets a spot, and we get to see what he looks like in a Broncos uniform and what he looks like catching passes from Bo Nix in a Broncos uniform. Okay. So with that being said, we're going to segue into the Browns aspect of the Monday night game. And what do the Broncos have to fear the most? Now, I would say Jameis Winston. There's something funny about Jameis Winston. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it is just really weird. Like, I don't know what. I don't know, like that interview that it was. I think he gave one before the game, and then he gave one after, where it was just kind of like, I don't know. I felt like maybe he was high or something, but he was able to do what the Broncos couldn't against their week 2 matchup. So I'm actually really jealous. I really am, because this is a man that has beat the Ravens and has beat the Steelers once already. And I didn't give the Browns credit for beating them at all in my predictions episode, which not episode list that Ty and I did, because, and I keep forgetting to have this thing out before every session. So last week I had the Broncos losing to Atlanta, and Ty had them winning. So Ty takes the lead on me on that. Or 2 weeks ago, sorry, just to recap. And then I had the Broncos winning against Vegas, and the Broncos did win. And for this one, we split again. Ty, I have the Broncos winning against Cleveland, and Ty has us losing against Cleveland. So one of us is going to be right on that game day. So but the crazy thing is that while I'm not worried about Jameis Winston, I am kind of worried about Jerry Jeudy. This is going to be his first time coming back to Denver as a non-Bronco player. As he stepped up. I got to give him credit. He stepped up big with Amari Cooper being gone. So it's going to be interesting to see what that matchup looks like against PS2 being on him and basically taking away Jameis Winston's biggest weapon. So I don't really think that the Browns are going to be that much of a threat throwing wise. Running wise is a different story. That kind of does worry me a little bit, just because the Nick Chubb has been kind of taking his time getting used to getting acclimated back into the NFL scene in terms of, taking hits and avoiding getting hurt, which is what a lot of running backs coming back from his type of injury normally do. We saw with Javonte Williams when he came back from his knee injury what was it, 2 years ago. And it kind of doesn't make them the same player. Now, he did have a pretty good outing fantasy-wise last week, but he was mostly used in red zone games, and he's really good at being pushed through the red zone. I mean, he's Nick freaking Chubb. So Nick Chubb does worry me, and he's going to give our linebackers a run for their money in terms of being putting. That's why I'm saying it is really important that we hopefully have Zach Allen there, because Zach Allen is really helps with stuffing the run. You know, we do have Malcolm Roach, but Malcolm Roach can only do so much as one person. So with him and Zach Allen out there, those two guys are very formidable defensive tackles, and they can definitely are really good at clogging up the lanes and keeping the running backs from running amok that are not named Derrick Henry. We have one of our first chat here who says, true, Bloody Zens, thank you so much for watching us on Twitch. It is so good to be able to be back on the Twitch chat. We did have a couple of issues before seeing comments from there, but thank goodness they are coming back in. So I do think that the running game might be a bit of an issue. With that being said, I can't remember the wide receiver 2's name from the Browns that's behind Judy. I had him on my fantasy team last week, but the second one might be. But then again, I don't think that even Jameis Winston has ever run into a buzzsaw defense like the Broncos. So even though the Steelers defense front line is pretty good, like their secondary, aside from Fitzpatrick, is probably their weakest aspect. And Jameis Winston exposed it with Jerry Jeudy, again, in the snow. So otherwise, that game would have been a whole lot closer than it was. So I don't think that that's going to actually happen this time around. I do think that the Broncos are going to, well, obviously they're going to beat the Browns. But the question is, how are the Broncos going to beat the Browns? And I think that it's going to probably come down to, Bo Nix has gotten so used to playing at home and really taking advantage of the mile-high air and just the, playing in 5280. So I think that that's going to be really, really good for him going forward. He's going to, I'm trying not to get ahead of myself, but I'm just so amazed with what that man has done. And, just to kind of get sidetracked here a little bit, folks, like the fact that he was able to take the conversation of Offensive Rookie of the Year and literally go neck to neck with what Jaden Daniels, because Jaden Daniels, last week I said that Jaden Daniels I thought was going to take a huge leap against the Cowboys, and he really struggled. And he had like one miracle throw to McLaurin that kind of almost saved him, but I don't think it was enough to kind of say, hey, like this is definitely the guy, because unfortunately they did fall to the Cowboys, which is like one of the worst teams in football right now. So I think that both of those guys are neck and neck, and I'm trying not to be like, Bo Nix is going to, I'm not trying to say he's going to win it for 100% sure, not yet, because even though the Commanders did lose to the Cowboys, which is still bad, but at least they almost rallied back. And Bo Nix has had a couple of games where he rallied back for us, and we did win. So they've both been in that same scenario. For Jane Daniels, take it from whoever you want. The Commanders should have lost that game against the Bears. Okay, just like the Broncos should have beat the Chiefs, and the Bengals should have beat the Chiefs. It's in that same scenario. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. Okay, and he got lucky on a Hail Mary pass from a Bears player that wasn't paying attention, and had he paid attention, he should have swatted that ball down or to the side, but not backwards into the hands of a waiting Noah Brown. So maybe if the Commanders had lost that game and the Bears had actually won, then we'd be talking a whole different story in terms of, Bo Nix is definitely the guy. Although a lot of media outlets have already proclaimed as Bo Nix being a definite winner of the Offensive Rookie of the Year. And I really do hope he gets it, because that is going to shut up a whole bunch of people who open their mouth the second that Roger Goodell announced Bo Nix as the winner. Okay. The literal freaking second, people were already on Twitter going bananas, saying, oh, being picked last and, Bo Nix sucks. And it's just, I'm trying not to swear. Gotta remember I can't swear. So Bronco Maniac jumping in and saying, go Broncos. Exactly, my friend. Exactly. Go Broncos. Bronco Maniac. Thank you so much for joining and being a part of today's show. And I couldn't agree with you more. Go Broncos. Exactly. And that's the motto that's been engraved in my head every single time that the Broncos lose. Like, yes, I get mad and I rant and I rave and do all that stuff, but at the end of the day, go Broncos. There's no, I mean, is there anything else you can say? Because you really can't. Let's go Broncos, Like, yeah, your team sucks or you got laid off or whatever. Go Broncos. That's almost too cheesy, but this is definitely a get right game for Denver in terms of, well, maybe get right isn't the right saying. Bronco Maniac saying the Sean Payton era. Exactly. I am like this close to coming on here one of these days and eating crow on Sean Payton because I talked so much crap about Sean Payton because I was still not happy that he got Russell Wilson out of town. Okay. I believe that he was the one that convinced the management to go out and do it and for them to eat the dead cap money and put us in the situation that we're in financially, which was limiting the Broncos and, paying who they can pay and getting who they can get in free agency, because obviously all that stuff, while you don't have to worry about it during this season, you'll have to worry about it during the offseason, especially if you get somebody that you can't afford to get. So, but when I sat down and I thought about it, I'm like, okay, if Sean Payton had gotten like Brock Bowers or something, we'd be just like the Raiders. That's, if you want to know what life without Bo Nix would look like, go look at the Raiders, because that's exactly what it would have been for us. Like, we would have had a shiny new toy in Brock Bowers, but no quarterback to throw him the ball to. Between trying to figure out who was better out of the worst, too, in terms of Zach Wilson and Jarrett Stidham, and God forbid that they didn't go out and get like Daniel Jones out of waivers or something, So the fact that the Broncos were able to take away the last quarterback out of that entire class, it makes me sleep better at night. And the fact that the Falcons took Michael Penix Jr., who they didn't even need, they took him anyway. Because I don't know if I said this before on this show, but I so heartily believe that the Falcons took Michael Penix Jr. as an insurance policy in case Kirk Cousins goes down. Now, the way the Falcons are playing against Denver before their bye, if I'm not mistaken, that was the first time Michael Penix has thrown the football during the season as the quarterback. So if the Falcons play doesn't get any better and Kirk Cousins continues to struggle, I wonder how long it's going to take until we start seeing we finally see Michael Penix just start one of these games. And hopefully it's not like when the Falcons are officially mathematically eliminated from playoff contention, then it's like, all right, well, Michael Penix go out there and play, do what you can do. And he's probably going to look good because it's probably going to happen against teams that are like either resting their starters or teams that are not going to be in the playoffs anyway. And it's just going to be like, best available. So it's going to be like an early preseason game of 2025. But it makes me so glad that they were not able to get one. So we still haven't been able really to fully see what we have in Michael Penix Jr. and what we have out of J.J. McCarthy. McCarthy, unfortunately, will not suit up until next year for the Vikings. However, with that being said, like there's another thing that the Broncos learned their lesson from Bowers in the first game, which is they didn't let Bowers go run amok. And Bowers was the player that a lot of us in Broncos country on almost every podcast I had seen before that game was worried about. Rightfully so. He was his only shiny weapon. Jacoby Myers looked like he was about to be a threat in the first half because he kept getting all these open passes, but then Broncos shut that crap down right away. And they didn't have anything. So it was beautiful to see all the memes, all the videos on TikTok of people throwing dirt on the floor and putting the Raiders over and just sweeping it up into the dustpan and throwing it into the garbage. One of the most beautiful times to be a Bronco fan is when you get to see those beautiful sweep memes. And I know what you're going to say. If there's any Raiders or Chargers or Chiefs fans like, oh, we've been doing it for a long time. Well, that's perfectly fine and beautiful, but there's nothing like seeing it after it's happened to you for so long when you finally get to see it happen to somebody else. And the name I've never seen here on this show, ladies and gentlemen, just Joshin saying, let's go Denver. Yeah, exactly, my man. Let's go Denver. Thank you so much for joining us live here, Joshin. If this is your first time here, welcome to Broncos Talk. It's good to have you. Thank you so much for tuning in and for showing your support. But back to the Browns game. This is a game that the Broncos have to win because, unfortunately, we've lost to the Ravens and we've lost to the Steelers. So the Broncos have a chance to go 2-2 in the AFC. What is it? The North? Yeah, AFC North, right? Yeah. So they can go. They beat the Browns, and then that Week 17 matchup against the Bengals is going to be a tough one as well. Then splitting it 2-2 won't be as bad because they're more than likely going to get the redemption in the playoffs against either the Ravens or the Steelers. And it's going to be for all the marbles, win or go home. And that's a game I cannot wait to see. But right now, the Browns, even though the Browns they do have ways to look formidable with, again, Jerry Jeudy and Nick Chubb, I don't think that that's going to be enough to rattle his team. And what I mean by that is right now, the Broncos are riding on a high that it's a high that has not been felt anywhere in Broncos country in a long time. And this is a high that was even higher than last year's team. Okay, because last year we still had Russell Wilson and we had an offense that when it didn't click, it kind of caught us by surprise. And then when we were expecting it to, it did. And then when we weren't expecting to, it did. So it's kind of like vice versa. You know, like that game in Houston, Russell Wilson should have won that game. That game against New England, Russell Wilson should have won us that game, but he didn't. The Broncos lost both of those games. They were crucial games in the AFC at that. So the Broncos losing to a really bad team in New England was just salt on the wound and literally eliminating them from playoff contention last year. So the fact that we don't have to worry about that this time and that the Broncos can beat a team like the Browns this coming Monday on Monday Night Football, and then after the bye week against the Colts, the rematch against the Chargers, which should be a good one, and who am I forgetting? There's another team in there I'm forgetting before the Bengals. I don't have their schedule pulled up, but there's another team that I can't remember off the top of my head that the Broncos have to play, and then they close out the season against the Chiefs and more than likely their backups. So this is exactly why the Broncos have to take this game really seriously, because this could also be a trap game. All right, let's keep it 100 here, folks. This could easily be a trap game. Just like it was last week when we looked on that Colts. Thank you so much, Ray Haas. I don't know why I couldn't think of the Colts. Didn't I mention the Colts? I thought I did. Can't remember. But hey, Ray, thank you so much for joining us. It's good to see you, Ray. Thanks for showing your support here on Broncos Talk. But the Broncos have to take every game literally serious and not take their foot off the pedal at all. If the Broncos get a lead, they have to keep that lead. They cannot let the opposing team back into the game because we have to shut up all the haters that think that this team is pretenders, that this team is probably only get lucky if the Broncos aren't able to win their division, which with every Chiefs win starting to be more and more unlikely, and that they can't do it. So beating these teams, whether they're good teams or bad teams, and not by a field goal at home, especially, is what this Broncos team needs to do. And it's going to be a beautiful thing when the Broncos defense shuts down Jerry Jeudy, when they get to Jameis Winston and sack the hell out of him, and just stomps the Browns like they did the last time the Browns came to Denver. Now, I will say the last time the Browns came to Denver, the Broncos did catch a break because Myles Garrett got hurt and he didn't play. And that's another guy I almost forgot about. Myles Garrett is probably right there the equivalent of the whole Max Crosby. So Bo Nix is definitely going to have to put on his skating shoes and do his best to skate around pursuing Myles Garrett. And while we're speaking about Myles Garrett, I don't know if I mentioned this on last week's show or on Viva Los Broncos, but Mike McGlinchey is starting to be such a liability. And I have a feeling that this man is going to get Bo Nix hurt. And I'm pretty sure it was against the Falcons game where I said that it really pained me to see Mike McGlinchey get his stuff pushed in by, I don't even know if it was a starter or who it was, but he literally got pushed into Bo Nix or the running back, but he got pushed in. And when you see how much money the Broncos are paying for Mike McGlinchey's services, makes my blood boil. And to see him getting his stuff pushed in. Now, Garrett Bowles, I don't have an issue with Garrett Bowles. I hope he gets his contract extension. Yes, Garrett Bowles has had a bit of laundry thrown his way, but he hasn't put his quarterback in harm's way and gotten him killed like Mike McGlinchey has. And I'm telling you guys, the first sign I saw of Mike McGlinchey possibly being not a good right tackle before he was even looked at by the Broncos was in that playoff game where Micah Parsons literally flipped that man over like a piece of rotisserie chicken on a shish kebab. Just flipped him right on his ass. And I was like, ugh. And then when I found out that the Bears and the Broncos were racing for his services, I was like, did the Broncos see what Micah Parsons did to him in the playoffs? And as soon as I said that, it became official that the Broncos won his services. So I was like, great. And I was really trying to be optimistic, and I was trying to get that image out of my head. But unfortunately, every time I hear his name being called for a flag or I see him getting his crap pushed in by an opposing player, it's like, I don't get why this team can't get a really good right tackle since the Peyton Manning era. Like, why? Just like the names of the quarterback carousel are long, our right tackle names are just as long. Like, it... I swear it's a good thing. I can't curse on here. But I need to see something different, because if the Broncos front office is going to go and do another crazy thing like, hey, we don't care how much you make. If you're not pulling your weight and doing your job, you're getting the hell out of here. And they probably shouldn't, because we've already seen through Russell Wilson. Then I don't know. I wouldn't be upset with them moving on from McGlinchey and eating that dead cap hit if a better option was available. But I'm trying to be optimistic. I'm trying to be fair. But it's really hard. It really is. And I pray, and while I am praying, with the way my luck is, it's probably going to be a turnaround. Whenever the Broncos do find their right tackle of the future, it's probably when Garrett Bowles hangs it up or he's not a Bronco anymore. And then now it's the left tackle that's being compromised. So I don't know. I'm not the offensive lines coach, so I can't really make a call on that. However, I can say that something needs to happen. Okay, because as good of a scrambler Bo Nix is, I don't want to see my quarterback scrambling every freaking play on every freaking drive. You know, so that just gives Russell Wilson like feelings. But to kind of close the segment before we get into the OT part of today's show, the Broncos should definitely be able to beat the Browns with little to no trouble at all. And that can only happen if Bo Nix continues to be the Bo Nix that we know now, instead of the Bo Nix that we saw against early in the season against the Steelers and the Ravens. Even though the Ravens game doesn't seem like it was so far long ago, everything that Bo Nix has learned and done since that Ravens game has been like night and day. He's been able to find his receivers. He's been able to keep the football safe most of the time. There have been a couple times that were really close calls where it should have been picks, but it wasn't anything outside of the Saints game where he threw it right at Honey Badger, where it was like, oh, crap. What the hell are you looking at? Oh, man. But don't worry, I have he's still a rookie signed somewhere that I'm going to just pop out whenever that next interception comes, if it happens during this year. Hopefully not. He's been really good at limiting those interceptions and making more completed passes and touchdowns. And that's a really good thing. And I have to give credit where credit is due. Sean Payton definitely knows what he's doing. The only thing Sean Payton is missing now, and it's something that I read on social media earlier that I think it was said by J.J. Watt, is that the Broncos continuing to play and being contenders and letting people know for next season, hey, we got something going on here, and we want you, if you're good enough, to be a part of it during free agency. Because unless the Broncos trade up for the first round, I wouldn't count their name in anything earlier than maybe late at that. Maybe mid if they don't trade up. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get into the early part, a little bit early, of today's show, which is a segment I like to call Broncos OT. Now, if this is your first time here, welcome. After hearing me talk for what it's been now, 57 minutes, I hope it's not been too long and you haven't got tired of me yet. But this is the part where I kind of go over every single game that's coming up this week, and I give my my thoughts about the outcome and just my it's kind of like a perspective outside of Broncos country. I try to include Denver in some of my takes, but unfortunately, not every matchup involves the Broncos. So I do hope you guys are enjoying it. I've been doing this for maybe this is the fourth or fifth time, if I'm not mistaken. So I hope you guys are enjoying it. And unfortunately, it requires hearing and watching me talk for another like 30 minutes or so. So I hope that's okay with everybody. But here we go. So the Thanksgiving dinner, the Thanksgiving holiday tomorrow. See, I'm already craving food. We have 3 games aside from our normal Thursday night football game. So it's really nice to be spoiled. We have the 4-7 Chicago Bears against the 10-1 Detroit Lions. Now, I was talking to my brother earlier about this because he's a huge Lions fan, and the Lions are dealing with some key injuries on both sides of the ball. But even so, the thing that makes the Lions such a great and dangerous team is that even though they're dealing with injuries, like their defense is probably their Achilles heel, but their offense, they've only lost one time. And if I'm not mistaken, that was to Tampa Bay, to Baker Mayfield and the weapons he had in that matchup. So the Lions, even their second stringers, can still put points on the board, and they're still dangerous. The Bears have not been able to beat an NFC rival yet. They barely lost to the Packers 2 weeks ago, and they barely lost to the Vikings, damn near by the same way by a kicker. So I will give credit where credit is due. Caleb Williams has been playing a whole lot better for the Bears ever since they fired their offensive coordinator and Shane Waltz. However, there's a lot of issues still going on with their Bears. Their offensive line is probably the worst in the league, and Matt Eberflus, I'm surprised that man still has a job and hasn't gotten fired yet. But everybody around him around the league gets fired, and he's still damn near untouchable. And don't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. I'd be laughing hard as hell if he gets a contract extension from the McCaskies going forward. But I want to say that just because the Lions are dealing with injuries, that gives the Bears a chance to win. But I don't think I don't think Caleb has played anybody of the caliber that the Lions have. And since they have so many weapons, they have so many ways to beat you, especially at home. I think Caleb struggles a whole lot more playing on the road than he does at home. He hasn't been acclimated himself to playing a little bit tougher. And I'm going to give the Lions the up on that one. So I think the Lions are going to win that game. And it might be close. It might not be, depending, because the Bears defense has also been pretty much of a letdown recently. But I wouldn't be surprised if this game comes down to like maybe a touchdown. Mercifully. If the Lions are fully healthy, they're going to run all over the Bears. And, it's going to be not even close. The Giants, the New York Giants, are 2-9 versus the 4-7 Dallas Cowboys. Who would have ever thought that the Cowboys were going to win last week? I mean, that was one of the best games I've seen, division games outside of the Broncos, that I've seen in a long time. I mean, just when you thought one team had it, it changed, then the momentum changed again, then it changed again, then it changed again. And if it wasn't for a missed Austin Seibert PAT, that game would have gone into overtime, and we would have gotten some more magic. But unfortunately, the Commanders, they weren't able to recover, and the Cowboys literally skipped to Mylou with a win. Now tomorrow, I want to pick the Giants because they are playing at Jerry World, and the Giants are not going to start DeVito. I think they learned their lesson from having to watch Baker Mayfield and the Bucs literally embarrass them on national TV. I don't know who's running that organization over there, who's making the calls, but letting Daniel Jones go, paying him all that money. Have you not learned from Russell Wilson and the Broncos? What the frick are you guys doing over there? You're paying him a whole ton of money to go be the backup to Sam Darnold this season. Like, make it make sense, but they literally can't because they're the Giants and they're that bad. Now, I will say that they're finally going to see what they have in Drew Lock, since they're paying him a whole bunch of money as a backup, as a starter now, since they acclimated him as a free agent. And I don't, as good as Drew Lock can be, I don't know if that's enough for him to, beat the Cowboys. I'd be kind of happy actually if he did, because then that would show some type of redemption and we can go back to laughing at the Cowboys. But I mean, Cooper Rush versus Drew Lock, I'm still going to take the Cowboys on that one, just because I think that maybe Drew Lock just needs more than a game to get acclimated into whatever system the Giants are running. But then again, when he was a Seahawk last year, his biggest victory came against the Eagles. So, but I don't think the Giants are going to get out of that one. Maybe not yet. I would say probably give Drew Lock maybe just this game to kind of get used to, what he has in Malik Neighbors and whatever other offensive weapons New York Giants have, and then maybe they can sneak one else there. But if I'm wrong on this, I wouldn't be mad, just for the simple fact that I still have some respect for Drew Lock. Some. And then the Thursday night game is the Green Bay Packers at 8-3 versus the Miami Dolphins 5-6. The Dolphins at the Packers. This one's going to be a good game. I mean, if Tua wasn't playing, I'd be 100% in on Green Bay. But there's just something about Dr. Love that I don't know. It's Tyreek Hill. Probably the cold is the only thing that can freeze up a really fast Tyreek Hill. But they have Devon A-Chain and Mostert and Waddle. They have so many great offensive weapons out there that might be enough. And there's something about the Packers defense that's kind of sus. Like, I know that the Bears last week, it's division, and division is always going to play themselves a little tougher. But the Packers should have not let it get, or not, that was it last week. 2 weeks ago. They killed the Niners. The Niners are how they started, but 2 weeks ago anyway. So there's something about the Packers defense that just kind of doesn't set right with me. I still think that the Packers are no, I changed that. I think Miami's going to win that. I haven't picked on, and I'm trying to remember all my picks from Confidence Pool. And I think Miami's going to win that just for the simple fact that the Packers, while they do play better at home, there's just, again, there's something with their defense that kind of seems shady to me, kind of shaky. And Jordan Love is like, I don't know. It's kind of like Patrick Mahomes in the sense that we're like he throws an interception at the most inopportune time or the wrong time to throw an interception. And I just think that Miami with Tua is just a whole lot more dangerous for them to play. So I think that they're going to go for the upset and they're going to upset Green Bay. We have a Black Friday game for some reason. I don't know why, but Friday football. The Las Vegas Raiders at 2-9 go up against the 10-1 Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead. So this one's a no-brainer. I think the Chiefs get another easy win out of the Raiders. Doesn't matter that Aiden O'Connell's back. Now, they did beat the Raiders, or they did beat the Chiefs last year on Christmas Day. So there's that shock, and I wouldn't really be mad at the fact that if it was up to me, I'd make them both lose, end in a tie. So both teams get to loss, and everybody in Broncos country goes home happy. But unfortunately, somebody has to win, and Patrick Mahomes did look a little better fantasy-wise against the Panthers last week, and the Panthers came so close to upsetting the defending, I'm not going to say those words, the Kansas City Chiefs. And I wouldn't be, like, nothing would make me laugh a whole lot, and nothing would make my weekend better than seeing the Raiders upset the Chiefs and me being wrong on it, and I'd totally be happy with it, but I'm going to go with the Chiefs just for the simple fact that the Raiders are even more beat up than they were last year. And then that moves us to the Sunday games. The LA Chargers versus the 7-4 LA Chargers versus the Atlanta Falcons, 6-5. If they can't get past the Chargers in this game, I think the Falcons are more than likely just done because they'd be at 6-6. They're trying to stay alive afloat in that NFC South. But, I mean, it really doesn't matter because the Broncos are the NFC South champions. But the Chargers are definitely going to be out for blood. They got embarrassed by the Ravens on Sunday Night Football. Or not Sunday night. This past Monday Night Football. And the Falcons have had a whole week off. They need to get their bearings together because they are not playing anywhere close to what people thought that they'd be playing earlier this year. And I'm going to pick the Falcons just for the simple fact that I don't want the Chargers to win. It made me happy to see the Chargers lose this past week. Unfortunately, it meant that the Ravens had to win, but double-edged sword, I guess you could say. So I'm going to pick the Falcons on that one. Hopefully, I'm right. Pittsburgh Steelers 8-3 at the Cincinnati Bengals 4-7. Another division game here, folks. The Bengals coming off of their bye week as well. They need to win this game because if they lose this game, especially to Pittsburgh, it's pretty much their season. I don't see them coming back anywhere in terms of like their last hurrah at a miracle playoff push. But I mean, unless the Steelers go back to trying to, see if what they have with Justin Fields, which I don't doubt. I think Russell Wilson's going to remain the starter going forward as long as he doesn't get injured. George Pickens and Russell Wilson have had a lot of good chemistry. I got to give them that. And even Freiermuth is doing some damage. So the Bengals defense is really suspect. It's not the best exactly per se. So, but I'm going to go with the Steelers on that one, just for the simple fact that the Steelers are going to be playing pissed off, especially after getting embarrassed last week Thursday on Thursday Night Football. Houston Texans 7-5 at the Jacksonville Jaguars 2-9. The Texans, the Jaguars, even coming off of their bye week, they're just, I don't know where they are. It's a miracle that Doug Peterson even still has a freaking job. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets fired after this game, to be honest, and they don't want to wait till Black Monday. And the Texans, I don't know what's going on with CJ Stroud, but he really needs to get his act together because that Houston Texans, from what we saw last year, looked like a definite deep playoff contender, and they have looked anything but. And if they lose to Jacksonville, there's Houston, we have a problem type of thing, So, but I'm going to pick the Texans on that one. There's no way they should lose to Jacksonville, who's just a shell of itself at this point. The Arizona Cardinals 6-5 against the 9-2 Minnesota Vikings. Now, I don't know what the hell happened to Arizona last week. I'm pretty sure I was wrong because I'm pretty sure I had them picked to win against Seattle, but they got literally embarrassed. They never even touched the end zone last week. Granted, it was a divisional game, but it was a division game that the Cardinals were they looked like they were about to take the division, and then they just got literally shell-shocked. And now they're playing a 9-2 Vikings team and a Brian Flores defense that it's kind of fell off, but it's, it bent but didn't break type of thing. And now that the Vikings have Daniel Jones, I'm interested to see if Sam Darnold struggles, do they bring in Daniel Jones? Or they see what they have in him while they have him? Like, it'll be interesting to see. Maybe not this game because it's going to take him some time to get acclimated to the new system, but don't be surprised that if the Vikings shell shock the Cardinals, that he comes in to close out the game at least, just to get some practice reps in. But I'm going to take the Vikings on that one because there's something I need Arizona to do something to convince me that they're, that last week was a fluke. So I don't really trust them to give them my pick again. And I'm going to pick the Vikings. The Indianapolis Colts 5-7 versus the 3-9 New England Patriots. Anthony Richardson looked like he was about to upset the Lions, and then the Lions just turned into the Lions, and they beat them, unfortunately, and the Patriots just got shellacked by Miami. This is probably one of those games. It's like you have one mediocre team and one really bad team. I'm going to stick with the Colts just for the simple fact that Anthony Richardson kind of seems to be trying to find his groove. Drake May doesn't have the weapons yet. That team needs to go and rebuild it from scratch, even at New England. So I wouldn't bet high on them, but I'm going to say that the Indianapolis Colts probably maybe win that by like a field goal or something, as long as Richardson can keep the ball away from Patriots defenders' hands. Patriots are still trying to I don't even know what the hell the Patriots are doing, to be honest with you. I keep forgetting Bill Belichick's not their coach anymore. Seattle Seahawks at 6-5 go up against the 3-8 New York Jets. This is Seahawks game all over. Even if the Seahawks do struggle in the air, Kenneth Walker is just a beast. And the Jets defense hasn't been the same since they let go of Robert Saleh. They're just not good. And Aaron Rodgers, with all his weapons, they just fired their GM before their bye, and they are so discombobulated that it's not even funny. And I'm pretty sure you've heard me say it here before. Hey, D-Rock, how you doing, my friend? Thank you so much for joining us here on Broncos Talk. Always glad to see your support. I've said it once and I'll say it again. I'll probably say it every single time I mention Aaron Rodgers. Be glad that he was not a Denver Bronco, because everything that the Jets are going through in a multiverse out there is with Denver. Everything. So right now, Sean Payton would probably be fired. George Payton would probably be fired. And, we'd have Devontae Adams, but we wouldn't have Bo Nix. And it'd just be just so freaking terrible. And it's at that stage where Aaron Rodgers, especially if he starts getting whiffed, that the whole thing about him not coming back as a Jet next year starts to take more and more, picks up more and more speed, that he's just not going to care. And they're probably not even going to play him, and they're going to bench him. They're going to do to him like they did with Russell Wilson last year in terms of the injury clause and not wanting to get hurt, so they don't have to pay him. So that's where that whole train wreck is heading. It's about to hit a wall again sooner than later. So I'm going to pick the Seahawks to win that one. The 3-8 Tennessee Titans against the Washington Commanders at 7-5. Now, the Titans, I got to admit, shocked the world last week because I did not have them picked to beat the Texans, but they did. But I don't think that they're going to have that same type of luck against the Commanders. The Commanders are definitely out for blood after getting embarrassed by the Cowboys last week, even though that was a division game, but that was a game that the Commanders should have won easily, especially with I don't know what the hell happened to Jaden Daniels, but he kind of seems to have fallen off a cliff a little bit. But this is the redemption game, because if the Commanders lose against the Titans, then there's really going to be a big problem in Washington, and heads are going to have to roll and fingers are going to have to be pointed to see who's to blame and how the hell they're going to fix it. And losing to Will Levis is just as bad as losing to Cooper Rush. Okay. And I think the Commanders running backs are beat up right now. Austin Eckler, I think, went out with a concussion last week, and Brian Robinson's dealing with a foot injury or a knee injury, something like that. So if they can't go, they're going to have to rely on Nichols. And McLaurin is always a threat to deal with as well. And Noah Brown, he's a sneaky little wide receiver too. So they have weapons. It's just that their defense can't get them the ball back to Jaden Daniels. And Jaden Daniels is not doing his job in terms of, taking the lead and the defense keeping it, which is the secret recipe that, well, it's not secret, but it's the recipe that the Broncos are doing. But I'm going to take the Washington Commanders to win that game. Tampa Bay Bucks at 5-6 against the Carolina Panthers at 3-8. Now, the Panthers have been finding a little bit of resiliency, so I got to give them credit for that, but I don't think it's going to be enough against the Bucks. This is another division game, and if Mike Evans wasn't playing, I'd probably say Carolina would play spoiler, but after the game that the Bucks had against the Giants, that was a big invigoration boost for that entire team, so they're going to be out there going out there and playing their hearts out. I got to give credit where credit's due again. Bryce Young has started to look a whole lot better this year than he did last year. Now, imagine if Canellis, their head coach, didn't break his spirit earlier on by adding Andy Dalton for no freaking reason. Like, yeah, the Panthers would probably still be where they are, but he would have a much better idea on how and what to do with Bryce Young. It'd be a whole lot better. They wouldn't have to deal, and it'd just be a whole lot better. They'd be in a whole lot better position. So, but I'm going to go with the Bucks on that one. If I'm wrong and the Panthers do beat the Bucks, I think that would probably be the biggest shock of the week. Out of all the upsets possibly, I think that one would be a whole lot more because nobody would expect the Panthers to beat the Buccaneers. The Rams at 5-6 against the New Orleans Saints at 4-7. You know what? I don't know what the hell's going on with the Saints, but they kind of have a little resurgence going on with their interim head coach. But that kind of seems to happen with a lot of teams when they get an interim head coach during the season. So the Rams are definitely going to come in playing hot and bothered. Just when they got embarrassed by Saquon on Sunday Night Football the other day, and they're going out there. They're looking for some revenge. I don't think the Saints are at that. Yeah, they have gotten some wins and they've beaten some teams that are either just their level or worse. But even with Derek Carr coming back, he still doesn't have Chris Olave. And they did trade Marshawn Lattimore. So they are missing some key weapons in that team. And I don't think it's enough to beat the Rams. They might go toe-to-toe with them, and they might be, hit and miss, but I don't think it's good enough to beat them. I'm going to pick the Rams to win that game. Philadelphia Eagles at 9-2 against the Baltimore Ravens at 8-4. Now, that's going to be a really good game, ladies and gentlemen. And man, did you have that Vic Fangio defense against Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson? I think I went Eagles on this one just for the simple fact that the Eagles are really playing some really great football, and so are the Ravens. But that Ravens secondary is still susceptible. And the only thing that will make me a whole lot feel better about my pick on the Eagles is if they get Devontae Smith back, because A.J. Brown has been really good for them, and he did come back up for them on a bunch of key points. But the way that Saquon has just been playing, I mean, Jalen Hurts doesn't have to do a whole much. He just has to give the ball, make sure that the ball touches Saquon's stomach and let Saquon do all the work. So, and he's been on a tear. But it's going to be really awesome to see Saquon versus Derrick Henry and see who has the better game out of the two of them. So I'm going to say that the Eagles probably scrape by. They are playing on the road, but still, I do think that they have the advantage on that one. And then the Sunday Night Football game of the week is the San Francisco 49ers 5-6 against the Bills at 9-2. Now, I'm surprised that this game didn't get flexed, but then again, they probably took a chance that maybe the Niners would get back a whole lot healthier or whatever, but this should be a squash. The Bills are coming off of their bye week. So, and they're definitely coming back a little bit more healthy than they went in going into the bye week. And the 49ers, even if they do get Purdy back, they're just dealing with so much. And Christian McCaffrey just doesn't see. He's kind of going through the same thing that Nick Chubb's going through in terms of even though McCaffrey didn't have a big injury like Chubb did, but it's just kind of getting acclimated. And they're coming in through like just past the mid part of the season, so it's even harder for them to get used to. When they probably do get used to the hits and the bumps and all that stuff, it'll probably be the end of the season. So too little, too late type of thing. But Josh Allen has just been playing some of the best football that the Bills have seen in a long time, and it shouldn't even be close. So I'm going to pick the Bills on that one. And then obviously the Browns and the Broncos, which we taled about for most of today's episode. The Broncos, always Broncos. regardless of who they're playing with, whether it's the best team in the league or the worst team in the league or in a different conference, doesn't freaking matter. Broncos all day. Oh, my goodness. But ladies and gentlemen, I've been rambling and talking your ear off for the longest now. I'm going to head out of here. But before I do, just want to let you guys know to please make sure you like, subscribe, and share and comment on Orange and Blue. On the Orange and Blue Network, we have a lot of great shows, a lot of great current programming, a lot of great future programming. Not going to give anything away. And also, please make sure you like and subscribe on the MHRT Network, which is where we are also coming to you live. And subscribe, share, comment, and like on all of their programming as well. Make sure you're telling your boy 610 sent you. And of course, as always, if you'd like to hit me up on Twitter, my link is right there at a 6'10" Mexican. I'm always down and happy to talk about any and all things football. If you are listening to us after the fact on audio, please make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification button so you get live notifications every time our shows get put up on the air. Please leave good reviews wherever it is you're listening to. Screenshot and send them to us so we can see and know that we are giving you the right thing that you are craving for, which is content, and how we can make it better, because that's what we do. We take what we have statistic wise and try to see what we can do it better. Kind of crazy, huh? For any business inquiries, you can email at broncostalk2020@gmail.com. Please do not forget to tune in to the flagship show here on the Nothing Rhymes with Orange and Blue Network, which airs every single Tuesday. And of course, the live pregame show that goes live before every single Broncos game that will be on this coming Monday, and the postgame Buck Your Feeling show that goes on after the game. Also, the neighborhood. If you can't watch the game because of whatever reason, don't worry. My good friends over at MHRT got you covered. They provide play-by-play analysis with Broncos Bill and sometimes Johnny Bakke, and it's just who's ever available that day, you know. And also, before I forget, please do not forget to tune in to Viva Los Broncos. My co-host Bronco Libre and I will be bringing you exactly what I talked about today, but in Spanish, along with everything that Bronco Libre was able to see and hear with him being in Denver. And he'll give us his perspective of the ambience and what the feeling was in Broncos country, watching it from, I think it was at a bar or a restaurant or something, but he'll definitely be here to talk about it in Spanish, and it will be going live this Friday, not Saturday, this Friday at 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific, and 8 over East, wherever East is. Jeez. You know, Johnny makes it sound so easy when he does it. But ladies and gentlemen, my name is Adan Diaz, and this has been Broncos Talk on the Orange and Blue and MHRT networks. I wish you and your family a very happy Thanksgiving. Quick funny story. I told Johnny before I went live that my family, we don't mostly eat turkey. We eat like ribs or whatever my parents come up with, and it's like, oh, you're fired. That was probably the most un-American thing I have ever said to Johnny. Oh, I wish I could have recorded that. It would have been funny. But either way, guys, make sure, please remember that tomorrow, it's not what's on the table, but it's all about the people that you're sitting around to share with. So please remember that. Enjoy your time with your loved ones. If you're traveling, please make sure you travel safely. You get to your destination, wherever it is, and you make the best of being around your loved ones this weekend. And if you're working like me tomorrow, hey, money doesn't grow on trees, right? I'm too much. And please continue to support any and all forms of Broncos media out there. There are so many shows, so many articles and stuff in Broncos country for you to enjoy. Please make sure you continue to do that. But talk your ear off enough. Ladies and gentlemen, have a good day, good night, wherever it is you're listening to. Again, happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there in Broncos country. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be back next Wednesday. Definitely getting another dub. Got to have a lot to talk about. And I know I keep talking too much. D-Rock says, happy Gluttony Day. Yeah. Happy Gluttony Day. Ladies and gentlemen, I swear I'm leaving. This has been Broncos. I already said that. I'm going to say it again. This has been Broncos Talk on the MHRT and Orange and Blue Networks. My name is Adan Diaz. And ladies and gentlemen, let's go Broncos!